We're back, baby. Horns Up Talking Texas podcast. Fisher to Sub was DJ, Nikki, Snacks, Kreider. Gentlemen, happy Monday. Good to see y'all. It's August 12th. That means we're just a few short weeks away from our national championship run this season. AP poll preseason is out. Our Texas Longhorns are fourth. I'll go through the quick AP poll right now, and then we'll get into three takeaways a pop. Number one, we have the Georgia Bulldogs. 2, the Ohio State Buckeyes. 3, Oregon Ducks. 4 in our first year at the SEC, the Texas Longhorns. Bama 5, Ole Miss 6, Notre Dame 7, Penn State 8, Michigan 9, our biggest opponent to start the season. Florida State 10, Mizzou 11, Utah 12, LSU 13, Clemson 14, Tennessee 15. Our rivals, the Oklahoma Sooners 16, OK State 17, K-State 18. The U is 19, A&M 20, Zona 21, KU, Kansas at 22. Wow. USC 23, North Carolina State 24. And the most potent offense in college football, the Iowa Hawkeyes at 25. Gentlemen, I'll kick us off. I feel like I haven't kicked off in a while in these types of scenarios. 3 takeaways. One takeaway for me, disrespectful, quite honestly. I know 4 is high. I know it's one of our highest rankings in a long time. We're the highest rated returning. We're the highest rated team of the teams that made the college football playoffs last year. The 3 teams ahead of us didn't. But we return just as many guys as the rest of them. It's not like we're not returning Quinn Ewers, who's a projected first-round pick. We returned pretty much our entire offensive line, and quite frankly, maybe our 4 best offensive linemen of the 5. We lost receivers. We had maybe the second or third best transfer portal haul out of everybody. We brought in Bond, who was the top dog for Bama last year, Golden, the top dog for Houston, Bolden, plus not to mention the growth of our 5-star recruits. Yes, we lost CJ Baxter. I don't think that went into effect actually in these rankings, right? And then obviously tight ends were strong. Defensively, we lose our 2 big mooses in the middle, but we still have Alfred Collins brought in the inside guys with experience, and not to mention the guys we brought in the transfer portal there with Trey Moore, Makuba in the defensive backfield, and our guys get older in the secondary. And I believe we returned 6 or 7 defensive starters or guys that had started at one point last year. So for me, I feel it's kind of disrespectful. We should have been ahead of Oregon in my book. Dan Lanning hasn't won nothing yet as a head coach. If you want to put Ohio State because of the returning talent in their haul ahead of us, fine. Did it with Georgia and say, okay, Georgia got beat by Bama last year and just got cucked out of the playoffs. Okay. But I feel like we should have been a top 3 team. And I know that's like splitting hairs, but to me it matters. And I think that 4 is disrespectful.
Okay. So my takeaway, 1, I disagree with you on the CJ Baxter thing, because I think that if CJ Baxter did not get hurt, then I feel like we would have been number 3. I think that they are taking that into a big account here, because if you look at the odds, we have 3rd best odds to win the national championship, and then they swung and we were replaced by Oregon. So I think that CJ Baxter injury definitely hurts us just a little bit in terms of the national spotlight, but I'm not mad at where we are. Obviously, like, if it's 3, if it's 4, if it's 5, it's no big deal, because, that still lands you as a playoff team in this new format. And at the end of the day, like, we, of course, always want a bigger, better ranking, but I don't want the target on our back right away, being number 1, being number 2, and then suffering a big loss and everyone's saying, oh, this is just all the Texas hype that they always get and they didn't deserve to be in there. I like kind of having your eye on the prize and working every week to get better and to move up in the rankings. It's kind of the same thing as if like you're running a marathon, at the Olympics or whatever, and you don't want to set the pace the entire race. You want to kind of keep your eye on the rest of the pack. And then when it gets time to, those last couple of stretches, that's when you want to have your eye on the prize and go for the kill. So I like the position of being at 4, being one of the top 4 teams that are in the playoff, and quite frankly, one of the top dogs in the SEC. It's nice that we even have to look at Georgia to see, watch them get dethroned. I like being the one that dethrones a champion. So let's just get on my 2 cents on it. But those are my 2 takeaways for Texas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with Nick on the point about CJ Baxter, 17 points between Oregon and Texas in regards to how the voting all shook out. So it was close between these teams. If a few voters decided one way or the other, we could be seeing it flipped here. And if you look at who was at 2 and who was at 5, we were neither Oregon nor Texas were close to 2, and neither Oregon nor Texas were close to being 5. So I don't really have any issues with us being 4. I likely attribute it to the fact that our running back, the biggest college football news last week was that the Texas Longhorns starting running back is out for the season. And that's on people's mind. That goes into voters' heads. And I think that's why we're at 4 instead of 3. It's a tremendous place to be. Maybe there's a little bit less pressure than being at 3, but we're still the University of Texas, and there's always a tremendous amount of pressure. And we always have a big red target on our back, and that's not changing, whether we're 3 or 4. The other takeaway is that even with Oklahoma and Texas joining the SEC, sustained dominance, 9 teams. So if you take out Texas and OU, there'd be 7 teams from the SEC in the top 25. We were talking about, and we've been talking about this entire offseason, how we like our schedule. But at the end of the day, we still have to deal with a lot of these teams in the SEC, many of which are in the top 25 right now as it stands. And I think, my eyes really go to, Josh, you were talking about how much turnover the LSU roster has. Ole Miss and Mizzou were fantastic teams last year. They have a really, really good shot at winning that SEC championship, just like any of the rest of the teams. And people need to watch out for them because they're really competitive. They're really well coached, and they want to make a name for themselves. And of course, the fact that Nick Saban is no longer coaching Alabama, we've talked about this before. There does feel to be, an up in the air. Oh, this conference can be grabbed. This conference can be taken. Of course, Kirby has the advantage, but everyone else is going for that number 1 spot. And it starts by winning the first year that Nick Saban's not in Tuscaloosa. So that's my other takeaway, is just that Texas and OU boosting the SEC like we thought they were going to, but also that conference is just an absolute powerhouse and absolutely and will be for the foreseeable future. Nothing's changing there.
Yeah, I'll throw 2 more. On the other hand, I'm excited that we're 4. This is the best we've been ranked in God knows how long. So this is great. It's a great step in the right direction. It's good movement and the right trajectory for Sark. I still think that, and I guess maybe the voting, they had time to change their vote if they wanted to with the CJ Baxter news. I kind of felt like maybe they had submitted already and they'd taken things into account, but maybe they voted more recently, and that's something that went to play. All that to be said, I do feel I don't mind the smoke. Bring the smoke. Like, I get like wanting to chase the champion, but like at the same time, like I feel the most confident I've been without feeling like it's crazy in a long time. Like, I actually genuinely look at these other 3 teams and I go, they are really talented. And I look at the teams behind us, and outside of Bama, I don't really trust anybody. Do I think Ole Miss and Mizzou, like you mentioned, are nice? Yeah, I think their offenses are going to be sweet, and I think their coaches are good, and I think they're going to be really competitive, and I think they're going to steal some games, and I think they're going to be sneaky. I do not think they're better than any of the top 5 teams. I think those. That. Yeah, I'm just saying, but I'm just saying I don't think they can win. They're not going to win. I think those 5 teams are the best 5 teams. And to me, it's clear cut, head and shoulders. I don't think anyone below that's gonna win the national championship, or let alone be in the national championship. I think those are the best 5 teams in college football. I do, from a ranking standpoint, I also think it's crazy that Penn State's ahead of Michigan. What have they won? They never won anything. Michigan's the defending national champion. I know they've lost guys. I know they lost their coach, but it's not like Sherrone Moore was not a head coach at any point last year. He was there for multiple games. Penn State being ahead of Michigan is just blasphemy. I think it's just ridiculous. So that to me was like something that really stuck out because like they haven't proven anything. And then Notre Dame is like Notre Dame. I'm just waiting for the shoe to fall on them. Like, yeah, and they can't be a top 4 seed. I think we've discussed this multiple times. So at this point, they got to join a conference or get the fuck out.
No, yeah, this is my takeaway too. It's just your typical every year overhype for Notre Dame early in the season. And then, you look halfway in the season and they're nowhere to be seen in the rankings because they've suffered too many losses, and it doesn't even matter at that point for them to make the playoff. But now that it's expanded, they have a shot. But you're right, they can't be a top 4 seed because they can't win a conference. But yes, they add Riley Leonard, which is, arguably one of the better transfers in the portal this year. But I still don't think that's doing it for me for this Notre Dame team until they join a conference, until they are able to execute every single year, getting the top tier talent when it comes to recruiting and watching them actually come to fruition. Then I'm still not bought in. So having a top 10 ranking for Notre Dame is not it for me. Maybe a top 15, but I think, what are they, 7? Like, that's too much.
7.
For me.
Yeah. I would say I would put Mizzou over them. Like Cook Burden, like that quarterback wide receiver combo.
Mizzou proved it last year.
Well, that could be the best
Notre Dame
combo.
didn't.
Yeah, the Cook Burden combo could be the best combo in the nation when it's all said and done. That I will say about Mizzou. I'm curious. What do you guys think about? Let me get it back up here because I was just looking at Reese Davis's. Is there a team that you think is in that 15 plus range or even 20, 18 plus range that could actually make a big jump and make some noise?
I mean, 18 plus or 15 plus?
Let's go 18 plus because top 15 is top 15.
Yeah. I mean, I think Arizona last year, honestly, had a really sneaky good year, and they're returning a lot of players. They're joining a new conference. I actually made a bet for them to win the Big 12 this year. I think that's a sneaky good odd. I mean, if they win the Big 12, then they're in the playoff. So I think I like what they're doing there. I can't say USC. NC State was nice last year. I think they can have a nice one. Miami always tends to kind of, fuck things up.
Yeah.
Oklahoma State, I think, probably is the favorite to win the Big 12 because, they're returning Ollie Gordon. They're the top dog there. They're the team that's been there the longest out of a lot of those teams. I think Oklahoma State and Arizona are the ones to look out for.
Okay. Toss.
Yeah, I mean, I think Miami and A&M, to me, from a talent standpoint, are ahead of the rest of that group. But I just don't trust those teams. I trust A&M more than I trust Miami. A&M they have a lot of really, really good college football players, but they've had rosters where they've had a lot of really good college football players, possibly a top 7, top 10 at times roster in college football, and they're just not able to execute. But we'll see. I like Elko. I like their head coach. It's year 1, right? Let's give them some time. Most new coaches need a little bit of time, a couple of years, a few years, sometimes more, to really establish what they want to do with the football team. We've seen, some teams, that bar has been raised a little bit, right? With head coaches coming in and immediately being good. See TCU going to the national championship in year 1 of their coach's tenure there. But yeah, I mean, none of the other teams. I mean, I guess Iowa, like if their defense is once again absolutely stout, then they can sneak their way into the Big Ten championship and slowly climb up the rankings. But you never trust their offense. That's all I really got. I mean, I like the Arizona Big 12 sneaky pick. I could see Kansas falling off, taking a little bit of a step back this year because they lost some of their premier talent from a playmaking standpoint. I don't know what to make of USC. Josh, you have the best finger on your on the pulse there. Like, I don't trust them at all.
I mean, I can't trust them. It's like opposite of Iowa. I can't trust them defensively until I see it, right? But I actually think Miller Moss it's not addition by subtraction. I don't know. It's like one of those weird things where Caleb's clearly an amazing player, but when he's gone, it kind of opens things up a little bit in a weird way. It's so less focused on him. So maybe Miller Moss and the rest of the offense has more room to breathe in that sense. They have Zachariah Branch, who I think he's a top 10 receiver in college football. I'm going to split the difference on you guys. I love the Arizona thing. I think McMillan and Fafita, that could also be the best quarterback wide receiver combo in the nation. And I think people really need to pay attention. They lose Jedd Fisch. If they had Jedd Fisch as their head coach still, Arizona, they would be a clear cut to me. Top 12 team, should be in the college football playoff. We have to see it with the head coaching change. And I actually like Miami. I like Miami a decent amount because I think Cristobal I don't know if he's the best head coach. I think he's a good head coach. And they add Cam Ward from Washington State. I think finally that should make a difference. They've struggled at the quarterback position for so long, in my opinion. I think bringing this guy in, I think that elevates them. And the ACC is just winnable. right? Like it's Florida State, Clemson, and it's like the same song and dance. ACC is just like a winnable conference for me. So if Miami can get it, like ditto with the Big 12, it's less like SEC is like a dogfight, but there are it's Bama, Texas, Georgia, and then there's the tier 2s. In the Big 10, it's Ohio State, Oregon, and I'm going to throw Michigan in there because I don't want to, especially as we're an early opponent for us, I don't want to poo-poo them. I think they're going to be strong. And then there's a tier 2 of, the Penn States, the USCs, Wisconsin somehow, some way is always in the mix. But I think I just look at these big, I think Kansas could be decent. I'm happy they're in there. That's exciting. Big 12 should be interesting. No Colorado, which is good. We don't want their hype in there. I'm interested to see what Utah does in the Big 12. They get healthy, right? They get their quarterback back, which is a former Texas player, Cam Rising. So that's going to make a big difference for them. But again, I'm looking at this AP poll. I believe that we could be the best team looking at these other teams. I think Ohio State's really dangerous, but it's not like they don't have a quarterback that we haven't seen before. Like we know what Will Howard is. We've seen him at Kansas State. So again, I think outside of Georgia, who fortunately we get at home, and that does make a massive difference. I don't look at any of those teams ahead of us and I'm like freaked out. Like, oh my God, we can't catch them. We're not the best team. We could easily be the best team in the nation looking at the 3 teams ahead of us and looking at who's behind us. So that's why I think it was a little disrespectful because to me, like, I look at our roster, I'm like, what's missing? Like, why not us? Like, what do they have that we don't have? We have that quarterback. We have that offensive line. We have those defensive studs. Like, we return our coaches. Like, why not us?
Yeah, I think Nick and I gave you the why not us, and it's because our
Baxter.
But like a 5-star running back, like a Doak Walker short list guy, like going out is a big deal.
It is a big deal, but it's not like he was really good last year, and I wish we had him. Trust me, and I feel horrible for him personally. But it's not like he was like lit the world. He didn't light the world on fire as a freshman. There was some left to be seen for us. He lost the starting job, and we all like Jaden Blue. Do I know if Jaden Blue is a true number one? No, but when we did our running back show, Jaden Blue was 1B. It wasn't like, all right, Baxter's the 1, Blue's the 2. He's a 1B, and I think last show, Nick, you brought up Jarrett Gibson. Time to step up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's not a case of like the actual why not us. I think it's more of to the national eyes why not us, because I think we all believe in our team and our running back room, but I think not as many people saw Jaden Blue, not as many people know who Jarrett Gibson is, not as people know Trey Wisner. Like, so we need to give the national media and everyone else just the opportunity just to see our running backs a little bit more. I mean, CJ Baxter is the shiny toy, right? He was the you mentioned Doak Walker watch list. He was getting Heisman odds. He's supposed to be the guy who takes over the keys to the kingdom from Bijan and Jonathan Brooks. So I think it's just a national thing. But I like everything I've seen from camp from Jaden Blue. He's added some weight. He's gotten bigger. He's the fastest running back on college football's ratings for Texas. So I like the speed there, but it's just a wait and see type thing.
Yeah, we've just been down this road before. I mean, I always point to the most unheralded great running back we've had, and that's Deonta Foreman, a guy who came in and stepped up. And you could even throw Brooks in there.
Don't treat what Nick and I are saying about as how we feel about our team. It's just
I know how you feel about our team. I know you're answering the national spot. I just don't think one running back makes that big of a difference when you're still getting. When we talk about guys coming in and new
but it's not just one running back. It's also Jaden Blue, who didn't have a ton of tape for people that don't just watch the Horns to say their running back room is going to be better than what Quidshawn Judkins brings to Ohio State. Like, it's just not the same because people know who that guy is, because people have seen that guy play a lot of high quality football at the running back position. And he got added to be alongside Trevion Henderson. And candidly, like, a lot of this, if you look at this top 25, like, it's very QB bias as well. And I could see why a lot of college football fans would say, oh, Dylan Gabriel is more trustworthy. He's more of a veteran type of QB that we've seen be incredibly successful over the last 3 years in comparison to Quinn Ewers, who was really good last year, still missed a little bit of time. 2 years ago, played half the season. Like, there's just more questions around the quarterback position. And I get that, why they might give a little bit of an advantage there to Gabriel. Now, Do people focus on the offensive line as much as they should? Never. Of course not. And that's where we win. But across the board, from a playmaking standpoint, a lot of our guys are unknown commodities outside of Bond. And guess what, Golden? Not a lot of people pay attention to Houston during the college football season. So we're excited about him, but I understand why other people wouldn't recognize what kind of talent he can bring. And guess who people do know a lot about? Evan Stewart. And even though he hasn't been good for the last 2 years, he's still on the Oregon Ducks, and that was a huge transfer portal move, and a lot of people know who he is. So I understand where they're coming from, and I agree with you that when it's all said and done, I am optimistic about where we can get to in comparison to, in particular, Oregon and Ohio State. I feel a little bit differently about Georgia than you. I think they're a clear cut above everyone right now, but that's why we get to play them, and that's what's so exciting about that game.
Why do you feel that way?
Because Carson Beck is the best quarterback in college football. And I say that with no hesitation. And I think Kirby Smart has done what Sark did last year for a longer time.
I just am curious why you think that's. I agree. I think Beck's the best, and I think they have better defensive players.
Their defense is also better than us. Yeah. Now, they don't have Brock Bowers. They don't have Ladd McConkey. There's going to be some questions that they have to answer to, but I trust Carson Beck to figure those out. But if we beat them, hey, all bets are off, and we acclaim the number 1 spot. So let's go do that. But we got to beat Michigan first and a couple of other teams.
Yeah. We see Ohio State versus Oregon October 12th. Is that the same day we play Georgia?
October 19th is when we play Georgia.
So it's a week before.
Okay. It's a week before. Cool.
I do like one last thing I'll say, just supporting your point about Miami. They play Florida at home. They play in the Swamp week 1. But then they don't really play anyone besides Florida State in the rest of their schedule. Their schedule is Florida, Florida A&M, Ball State, South Florida, Va-Tech, Cal. So we'll see how they are. Louisville, we'll see how they are. Florida State is the only ranked team on their schedule right now. So it's an interesting call out, because if they are winning football games and they get into that Florida State game and Florida State has lost to Clemson, they have a pretty easy schedule until they get into the later part of the season. So they play Notre Dame. But that Miami-Florida State game could be the ACC championship or at least the precursor to it. So it's an interesting call out with the Miami team.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's
Olympics, total medal count, 2024 by SEC schools. Texas finishes with the most, 17.
Who is the runner-up?
Florida with 11. And then
swimming.
And then Kentucky got 10.
Wow.
LSU got 8. A&M and Arkansas both got 7. Georgia got 6. Tennessee 5. Auburn 3. Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and South Carolina both had 2. Mizzou, Alabama, Vanderbilt 1. And can you name the team that did not call out that got 0 medals? Oklahoma.
Did they have representatives?
They might have. I don't know. It just says everyone but Oklahoma had a medal.
So
that's wild.
How many total medals did the SEC get?
I have to quickly count this all up. 1, 3, 6.
I got to be honest. I'm surprised that many teams had representatives. Like that. That's crazy. That's crazy. I knew we were dominating. I knew Florida was doing well. I knew LSU obviously has some talent.
69.
That's
wow. That's huge. Yeah, that's great. They could have competed as their own country.
Yeah.
And come in the top, 10.
Plenty of countries didn't win any medals at all. So that's wild.
That is wild. I went in the last thing. Jay Witt Witt's preseason for the Rams, but he was like a big story this weekend for the Rams. So I wanted to give him a shout out because he's a guy that we love, and it's just a perfect offense to be a part of. And if he could be a safety valve guy, I'm excited about him and hopeful for him. Look what they did with Puka. So that was awesome to see him get some love on Twitter and social this weekend after having a great showing.
Hope he eats.
All right, hook him, guys. We'll see y'all later.